Premièrement, un instant, ça me fait plaisir de vous voir aujourd'hui. En fait, on commence une nouvelle ère aujourd'hui avec un nouveau premier ministre après une victoire convaincante hier. Alors, bonne nouvelle, Mark Carney est le nouveau chef du Parti libéral et je suis confiante pour la suite des choses. I'm really happy today that a new era is starting. We now have a new leader of the Liberal Party of Canada, a new Prime Minister, and I think we can be confident for the next steps. So looking forward to answering your questions. Let's start in English and I'll go to French.
Marco Mendicino, chef de cabinet.
En anglais en premier. So any questions?
Mr. Carney had some pretty strong language for the Americans last night in his speech. How do you think that's going to, affect the relationship going forward between him and Donald Trump?
Well, I think when it comes to President Trump, it's clear that he respects strength. And I think that Canadians right now, because of what's going on with the tariff war that the U.S. launched against us, Canadians are mad. We're insulted about all this rhetoric regarding the 51st state and our former Prime Minister being called governor. So we think that's unacceptable. And that's why it is important that the new Prime Minister sends a clear message, unites Canadians, and more we're united, more will win.
Any indication if you will stay on as Foreign Affairs Minister?
That's a question you need to ask the new Prime Minister.
Well,
okay, last question in English.
Do you want to stay on as Foreign Affairs Minister?
Listen, this is not a decision of mine, but what I can say is that right now I think that the existing negotiating team has a lot of contact within the Trump administration, and more we're able to show stability, predictability, while we're dealing with chaos coming out of the Oval Office the best.
Est-ce que vous avez des mises à jour sur les tarifs américains qui pourraient venir dès mercredi, ou le lait ou le bois d'œuvre? Est-ce que vous avez la moindre mise à jour de l'administration américaine?
Pas pour l'instant, j'ai pas eu de conversation avec l'administration américaine en fin de semaine. Pourquoi? Parce qu'on avait beaucoup de choses à faire déjà ici à la maison.
Est-ce que vous avez des signaux? Est-ce que vous êtes confiante qu'on va pouvoir les éviter? Puis en période de transition, pas évident là, quand même.
Donc, on sait très bien que le 12 mars prochain, mercredi, il y a une menace de tarif, de droits de douane, comme on dit en français, contre l'aluminium et l'acier. Alors, on va suivre le tout de très, très près et on va être prêt également.
La décision de l'Ontario par rapport à l'électricité, est-ce que c'est quelque chose, c'est une décision de M. Ford, mais est-ce que c'est quelque chose que le gouvernement fédéral voit d'un œil, est-ce que c'est positif?
Parce que si les premiers ministres des provinces utilisent des leviers qui sont à notre avantage, bonne nouvelle.
In English on that, what do you think about Doug Ford's putting a surcharge on?
If premiers of provinces are using levers that are in favor of our position, good news. Let's do more of that.
Est-ce que le Québec devrait faire la même chose?
C'est une question à poser à François Legault, mais une chose est claire, c'est que le leadership démontré par la province de l'Ontario devrait en inspirer beaucoup d'autres.
When do you think there should be an election?
Oh, that's up to the new boss. Yeah.
What would you like?
Pardon me?
When is he being sworn in?
These are not questions I am equipped to answer right now.
Why do you think he won? Why do you think he won? And you voted for him, and why do you think he won?
Change. Canadians, number one, sense that we need a leader of stature, a leader of experience, and someone whose priority will be squarely focused on our economic needs, obviously beating back this threat from our southern neighbours, but more generally building the Canadian economy.
Should Canadians be prepared for an election? Should they be expecting one to come soon?
Again, that's a decision that is left to the leader of the Liberal Party of Canada.
How quick do you think the transition will happen?
Again, these are questions better posed to those who are in charge.
Former executive director of the party. There's a lot of ridings open which are very Liberal friendly. Would you have any advice to give to Mr. Carney? Maybe, there's Emmanuel de Bourg's riding, Pablo Rodriguez, way up in the Northwest Territories, Michael McLeod's riding. Where do you want to put him?
I have no doubt that Mr. Carney will make an excellent member of Parliament for whoever is lucky enough to welcome him in the constituency.
On turnout, there was 150,000 members-ish that voted. Out of the nearly 400,000 that had originally registered, why do you think that turnout was so much lower than expected?
It was higher than the last one.
What are your chances in the next election, you think, and are you prepared?
I never take the people of Gatineau for granted. I work very, very hard to stay close to my constituents, and I try and be ready at all times for an election, particularly, obviously, in a minority situation.
How
are the vibes now compared to 3 months ago? Walking into this caucus, what do you anticipate the difference will be?
Well, look, there's a changing of the guard, and that's an important point in the life of any political party. When a new leader is selected, I think we welcome them. We wait to hear what their priorities are, what their marching orders are, and I know that everyone will be standing ready to march alongside Mr. Carney as we move forward.
How big a change do you think this is going to be for the Liberal Party?
Every change is significant. Every leader brings their new stamp. Every leader brings their priority. These are priorities, in the case of Mr. Carney, the ones that he's talked about in the campaign that I personally welcome, and I think will find deep resonance in our caucus, and have already obviously found deep resonance within the Liberal Party itself.
And just to confirm, Mr. Carney's coming to caucus today?
I have no idea. You'll have to.
How do you feel about the state of the party now?
Look, the Liberal Party, as I've maintained all along, through its ups and downs, the Liberal Party is an incredibly resilient institution. It's one of the few things in Canada, political party or otherwise, where you can go to any nook and cranny of this country, call a meeting, and Liberals will come out. You can never count the Liberal Party out.
How quickly can you fill up all these?
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
What do you make of Ms. Freeland being such a distant second?
Look, Chrystia Freeland, I have valued my personal relationship with her, and I know she's an incredibly valued member of this Liberal team.
Do you think the Liberal Party is moving significantly to the right? I mean, we saw a total kind of collapse in vote for Karina Gould, who was kind of running to the left of Mark Carney. Where do you think the party is now ideologically compared to
I think I addressed that a moment ago. These are pivot points. Leaders bring priorities. The priorities identified by Mr. Carney appeared to be deeply resonant among Liberals.
Last question. You fill up all these seats that are still empty. I think more than half of the ridings.
I refer you to my previous answer about the Liberal Party. It's a very resilient institution that's always ready to go.
There was 163,000 people who got verified, and there were issues with that verification process. Do you think that was part of the reason the turnout ended up being so low?
Verification was an essential part of this process. Not perfect, obviously, but an essential part of the integrity of this process.
Should you just have directed people to go to in person to Canada Post?
We did.
But entirely?
We did. If the app was an issue, we did direct them to go to Canada Post.
Champagne, M. Poilievre dit que Carney et Trudeau, c'est du pareil au même. Vous répondez quoi?
Êtes-vous surpris? Ben moi, je vais vous dire, c'est le genre d'attaque personnelle que vous allez voir. Je l'ai dit, vous savez, l'ADN, on voit dans l'ADN de Pierre Poilievre l'ADN de Donald Trump. Hein? Vous allez le voir, des attaques personnelles, des attaques vicieuses. Moi, je ne vois pas ça, c'est pas surprenant de voir ça, ça a déjà commencé. Mais le monde est ailleurs. Le monde est ailleurs. On est en train de vivre une crise existentielle. On a besoin de s'unir. On n'a pas besoin de se... Tu sais, si la stratégie de Poilievre, c'est d'amener la politique américaine, le style de politique américaine chez nous au Canada, ça ne marchera pas.
Mais M. Champagne,
le monde n'est pas là.
de parler de M. Poilievre comme étant M. Trump, une copie de M. Trump, stratégiquement, peut-être que c'est gagnant, mais est-ce que c'est gagnant pour le Canada?
Non, mais l'ADN. Je parlais de l'ADN. Tu sais, d'amener ce genre de diviser. Tu sais, de diviser, moi, je pense pas que ça va amener loin. Le Canada est uni.
Ça divise pas, ça?
Ben, moi, je dirais le Canada est uni. C'est ça qui a une grande force chez nous. Le Canada est très uni dans la façon de faire. Il y a une unité nationale qu'on n'a jamais vue, moi, je pense, en tout cas. J'ai 54 ans, j'ai pas vu les gens aussi unis que ça. Alors, la politique de division, ça fonctionne pas chez nous. Là, les gens sont unis, les gens disent on va passer une période difficile, mais on va travailler ensemble, et puis ensemble, on va gagner, parce que c'est ça.
De savoir si c'est judicieux comme façon de faire,
Ben, moi, je parle de politique. Nous, on veut pas ce genre de politique-là chez nous. Les Canadiens veulent pas ça. Alors, moi, je dis d'importer le style. Je parle du style politique, de ça, des attaques personnelles, genre de, on parle de... C'est pas comme ça qu'on fonctionne chez nous. On veut pas ça chez nous. On a besoin d'unité nationale pour gagner. On s'est dit hier, les règles du jeu ont changé. Quand les règles sont claires, on gagne. Mais là, nous, il faut s'unir, il faut pas se diviser. Je pense qu'un message de division, ça rallie pas les Canadiens aujourd'hui.
Aimeriez-vous ça être ministre des Finances, M. Champagne?
Ben, écoutez, c'est pas à moi de commencer à dire ces choses-là. Moi, je suis là pour servir. M. Carney va avoir le meilleur cabinet possible, mais c'est sûr que l'économie va être au cœur de nos préoccupations. Hier, on a parlé de vision, on a parlé d'ambition, on a parlé de respect. Et moi, je pense que, tu sais, quand on a parlé de responsabilité fiscale, de justice sociale, de leadership indépendant, c'est le genre de choses où je pense que le Canada est rendu là. Je pense que c'est ça qu'on veut. Et aussi, le monde a changé. Tu sais, je reviens à la question de votre collègue. Les gens me disaient, oui, mais vous changez peut-être un petit peu de cap sur différentes politiques. C'est sûr, parce que le monde a changé. Le pire, ça serait de pas adapter notre politique quand le monde change devant nous. Notre plus grand allié nous tourne le dos. Alors moi, je pense qu'il y a une autre façon de faire, puis il faut vraiment s'adapter à cette nouvelle réalité.
Calling Mr. Carney sneaky, calling him a liar, saying that he's going to sell out to Donald Trump.
Do you think that calling people names is going to make a difference? I mean, that's the kind of politics Canadians don't want to see. People want to see unity. People want to see us fighting together. This is Team Canada fighting for our own existence. Our largest trading partner is turning its back on us, and you have people starting calling names. Really? Let's be grown up. This is an existential threat. If you want to be a leader, you have to be somewhere else in how you approach things. I know that's the conservative approach, calling names, vicious attack. We're not there. Listen, we're not there. Try that and you'll be in opposition. Canadians are moving on from that. This is about our unity. This is about our strength. This is about our future. There's no place for that, in my view, in Canadian politics.
Do you think you should go to the polls right away to Donald Trump? Is equating Pierre Poilievre to Donald Trump, isn't that kind of the same personal insult style?
The approach that they're, you know, we don't want a division in our country. We want unity. And I think that's the message. And I've been saying that even yesterday on U.S. television. I said, you know what, that would be a good moment now with a new leader in Canada to really make sure that we push the reset button in Washington in the way they engage with Canada. Because what we want in Canada is respect. And Mark Carney has been very clear. There'll be tariff until, you know, our largest trading partner is showing respect to Canada.
Do you think you should go to the polls right away or wait?
How quickly would you like to see? How are you feeling today? Feeling great. How are you? Not too bad. There was about 152,000 votes actually cast, around 400,000 members. Is that low for you? What do you think?
Well, 400,000 seemed high. Let's start there. But I think the percentage of voter turnout reflects really just a percentage of those registered to vote. And what I take that to be is that the mechanisms to prevent fraud and foreign interference actually worked. So the low numbers are understandable.
There were some problems with the verification process that we were getting lots of emails from people. Do you think that had an impact at all?
So the way I analyzed it was that the party had a choice to make between having more lax registration criteria or having very difficult registration and voting criteria to prevent foreign interference. And they erred on the side of the latter, so as to prevent foreign interference and voting fraud. So I think the right call was made, but I take the point, as I'm sure the party would, that there were voters who were frustrated out there.
What specifically changed and made you want to stay on again? And did Mr. Carney say anything to you specifically that made you want to run?
Mark Carney encouraged me to throw my hat in the ring again, but so did thousands of Canadians across the country, including in my riding of Oakville, who wrote and called and texted and emailed and said, we really want you to stay on. Couple that with the crisis that we are in right now, economically, facing 25% tariffs from the United States, and my work as the Minister of Internal Trade, meant that this is not the moment for me to return to academia. I do hope to return at some point, but now is the time for us all, regardless of what we do in our daily lives, to stand up and fight for our country as patriotically as possible.
Est-ce que M. Carney vous a promis un poste de ministre dans son nouveau cabinet pour
Pas du tout. Il n'y a pas quelque chose comme ça, pas du tout. Il a m'encouragé de continuer d'être député ou d'essayer d'être député dans la prochaine élection, mais il n'y a pas de promesse comme ça. Et pour nous et pour tout le monde avec moi sur mon équipe, c'est une matière de défendre pas seulement ma circonscription, mais aussi défendre nos valeurs progressives. Ça, c'est la chose la plus importante dans la prochaine élection. On doit bâtir notre économie et aussi on doit protéger notre population contre les menaces des États-Unis.
What appropriate would you like to see an election called?
Actually, my focus isn't on the election at all. My focus is on ensuring that we're building the strongest Canadian economy possible. That means reducing barriers to internal trade. That means diversifying our supply chains so that we're not 80% reliant on the United States for our bilateral trade. That's what's important to me, and I know that's important to Mark Carney as well.
On has some strong language about Mr. Trump. What do you think that means for their relationship?
I think what we have seen over the past number of weeks is that every day there is a differing message coming to Canada from the White House. What that means is we need to be strong, have our elbows up, ensure that we're defending the Canadian economy and the Canadian population the best we possibly can. It also means ensuring that the United States recognizes the interdependent and symbiotic relationships that exist from a trading perspective. You can't build a Keystone pipeline without Canadian aluminum and steel. That has to be recognized.
On internal trade, healthcare workers are a common issue. Are you going to resolve that anytime soon?
Labor mobility is at the very top of the list in terms of reducing barriers to internal trade. That includes workers across the board. There are workers where we need to look to prioritize. That includes the healthcare sector, financial services, and construction, to name a few. But across the board, it is time-consuming and inefficient for Canadian workers to have to re-credential and relicense every time they want to relocate to follow demand or to live with their families. And so the priority on labor mobility is felt around the table, and certainly Minister MacKinnon and I have been working extremely hard on that.
Est-ce que M. Carney vous a pas fait de promesse de portefeuille, mais vous, est-ce que vous lui avez fait une demande?
Pas du tout. C'est pas la manière pour moi d'opérer dans notre gouvernement. Je suis ici pour servir notre population, n'importe qui est le leader. Ça, c'est la raison pour laquelle je suis députée et je vais continuer de bâtir notre économie, de servir notre population.
Mais vous aviez décidé de quitter, donc là, vous décidez de revenir. Vous n'avez rien eu en échange, aucune garantie.
Pas du tout. J'ai dit ça déjà, juste maintenant. C'est pas de promesse, pas du tout. Et ça, ce n'est pas la manière avec moi pour opérer. Je suis ici pour servir. Ça, c'est la chose la plus importante pour moi, comme ministre, comme député, comme personne, comme professeur, comme maître. C'est d'être ici pour servir, de faire les choses qu'on peut faire dans cet temps très difficile dans notre pays. Donc, merci beaucoup.
The key thing Mr. Carney needs to do to take on Pierre Poilievre right now.
Well, I mean, look, I think Mr. Carney has to make the argument to Canadians that somebody who actually managed the Bank of Canada through the 2008 crisis, managed the Bank of England through Brexit, and has spent an enormous amount of time in the business world, is best placed to actually deal with Donald Trump versus somebody who has sat in a green chair in the House of Commons since he was an undergraduate student. So I think that's a pretty easy argument.
What do you think your party's chances are in the next election now, and how much has that changed?
It's changed a lot. I mean, on the ground, I was with Mr. Carney in my riding 3 weeks ago, and we had almost 1,000 people show up in a ballroom just to hear him speak. It's changed a lot.
How are you feeling about the state of the party? What you're feeling today?
I'm feeling enormously optimistic. I actually think we have a lot of momentum, and I think for all the right reasons, he is the right guy to be able to deal with Donald Trump, and I think it's all to the good.
Monsieur Poilievre affirme que en tentant de déménager le siège social de Brookfield Asset Management, vers New York. Il s'est mis à genoux devant Donald Trump, alors que M. Carney disait l'inverse, que c'est M. Poilievre qui se mettait à genoux. Est-ce que vous n'avez pas l'impression qu'il y a une faille?
a dit durant les derniers 2 ans que le Canada est cassé. C'est quelque chose qui n'est pas très utile dans une conversation avec M. Trump qui veut prendre le Canada. Et je crois que M. Poilievre doit considérer la langue qu'il utilise à l'avenir.
What do you think about the tone of the attacks the Conservatives have been launching against Mr. Carney already, and what should we be expecting in the election campaign?
Well, I mean, I think the Conservatives are resorting to the kind of dirty personal politics that Mr. Poilievre has been known for since he was in cabinet with Stephen Harper. I think that's unfortunate, but I actually think Canadians are not in that mood. Canadians are in a mood to rally around the flag, to rally around somebody who actually can stand up to Donald Trump. So.
Mr. Carney, Mr. Carney,
continue on the campaign trail.
Well, it's a really good question. I mean, obviously, I think a number of us who are directly engaged in the discussions with the United States will need to continue to be engaged with the United States. We obviously need to do that in a thoughtful way and not in a partisan way. But, I mean, this afternoon I'm off to Houston to meet with my counterparts at CERAWeek in Houston. So, I mean, we need to continue to move forward, and Canadians would expect no less. So.
Mr. Tax going up April 1.
They did do some strong language of Mr. Poilievre as well as Mr. Trump. Was that the right move?
Well, look, I mean, Mr. Poilievre, as I said in French, has spent the last 2 years telling Canadians that Canada is broken. I don't think that's the way Canadians feel about Canada right now. They think Canada is the best country in the world in which to live, something worth protecting and something worth fighting for. And I think that's exactly what Mr. Carney said last night. So are you...
I was just wondering, is the consumer carbon tax going up April 1?
Well, I think there are some decisions that Mr. Carney's going to have to make, but he was very clear last night that the carbon tax is going away. So. Well, I don't want to speak for Mr. Carney. I think those are some of the early decisions he's going to have to make. So.
Are you concerned at all about, it was about 152,000 people voted out of the 400,000 Liberals registered. Are you concerned about that at all?
No, I mean, I think that's actually a pretty good turnout in terms of a leadership race. When you actually have a lot of people signing up, that's basically a 40% turnout. I think that's actually pretty good. And to be honest with you, in my riding, there were like 1,000 people who voted. Normally, the number of members in my riding is half that. So it was great. I think it's fantastic. So thank you.
Monsieur McGuinty, est-ce que vous espérez garder votre poste quand le nouveau cabinet va être nommé? Est-ce que ce serait la bonne chose à faire en prévision de ce qui se passe aux États-Unis?
C'est entièrement une question pour M. Carney.
En avez-vous jasé avec lui?
Non. Écoute, on travaille. Moi, je suis très content d'être ici avec mes collègues. On a beaucoup de travail à faire. Mais je peux vous dire que ce que je vois sur le terrain partout au Canada, c'est un changement majeur. En attitude, en réceptivité, M. Carney, je pense, est vraiment l'homme pour le moment. Man for the moment, comme on dit en bon anglais. Et je pense que ce qu'on voit devant nous, c'est une opportunité d'aller travailler d'arrache-pied pour aller obtenir l'appui des Canadiens et des Canadiennes partout au Canada.
C'est pas gagné, ça?
Absolument pas.
Est-ce que c'est un vote fragile, le vote libéral en ce moment?
En politique, rien n'est gagné avant d'être gagné. Hein? C'est ma 30e campagne politique depuis 40 ans, où je me présente, où je suis impliqué, ou que je gère une campagne. Donc, je peux vous dire que chaque fois, il faut aller faire la demande avec humilité, avec sincérité, avec authenticité aux Canadiennes et aux Canadiens à leur porte, dans leur église, dans les mosquées, dans les magasins, partout au Canada. Il faut aller demander l'appui, il faut le faire d'une façon sincère et de présenter un plan pour, dans ce moment ici, faire affaire avec les États-Unis.
Pierre Poilievre dit que Justin Trudeau et Mark Carney, c'est la même chose. C'est du pareil au même. Vous répondez quoi à ça?
Pierre Poilievre? M. Poilievre semble être pris dans un monde de slogans. C'est tout ce que j'ai à dire là-dessus.
How quickly would you like to see an election called? Sorry? How quickly would you like to see an election called?
Well, that's really up to Mr. Carney and the transition plan. There's obviously lots to do. There's a lot of work to be done. I'm looking forward to being here in caucus with my colleagues. Like I said just a moment ago, I think what we're seeing now is an opportunity for us to go forward and ask Canadians with sincerity, with authenticity, with humility for their support. There's a lot at stake right now, and I think Mr. Carney is very well placed to deal with the American administration. I believe much better than Mr. Poilievre. I've known Mr. Poilievre for probably 24 years, and I think Mr. Carney is a very good man for this moment, and I hope that we can convince the Canadian people of that very fact.
Thank you very much.
Mr. Carney, where should you run?
Ask him.
Is he going to be appearing in caucus?
I don't know, but I'm going to go into caucus right now and take a look.
What do you think the timeline is for the transition?
Oh, I think it's a week or two. I really don't know. I wish I could be helpful.
We're going to go in now.
Thank you, guys.
Monsieur Carney, où devrait-il se présenter? Est-ce que c'est en Ontario, à Edmonton, au Québec?
Il est assez grand pour décider ça lui-même.
Est-ce que ce serait un avantage qu'il soit en Alberta, par exemple?
Bien, effectivement, il a des racines albertaines très profondes. Moi, j'en ai des moins profondes. J'ai déjà aussi habité et étudié à Edmonton. Alors, il est fier de son héritage albertain. Il vient des territoires du Nord-Ouest, c'est là qu'il est né. Il a habité évidemment ici dans la région d'Ottawa-Gatineau. Fait qu'il va avoir un bon choix à faire.
Marco Mendicino, un chef de cabinet?
Bien, je connais bien Marco. C'est un bonhomme qui connaît très bien l'administration du gouvernement canadien. Il arrive avec une expérience solide. On sait qu'il est là pour la transition. Et ça va être un personnage important dans les prochains jours.
Vous avez pensé quoi du résultat de Mme Freeland? Qui était la ministre des Finances, elle a occupé plein de postes importants.
Honnêtement, je vais vous livrer le fond de ma pensée. Moi, j'ai beaucoup de respect et beaucoup d'estime pour ce que Chrystia a fait. J'ai travaillé très bien avec elle durant les dernières années. Durant la COVID, on était ensemble à peu près tous les jours pour sauver des emplois et sauver des vies. Elle a donné tout ce qu'elle avait, tout son cœur. C'est une personne résiliente. Chrystia a beaucoup appris au cours des dernières semaines, nous a beaucoup donné durant la campagne à la chefferie, et je pense qu'elle va en sortir encore plus forte.
How quickly would you like to see an election?
Well, we know the deadline is March the 24th. The opposition parties have been very clear for weeks and months now. They have decided that they would bring this government down regardless of what we could do. So this is the latest day we can be in government, and we'll see whether we should call an election beforehand.
Les conservateurs refusent de féliciter M. Carney parce qu'ils disent qu'il a conseillé Justin Trudeau pour ses mauvaises décisions économiques, et aujourd'hui il copie nos idées. Vous répondez quoi?
M. Poilievre est très mal placé pour parler d'économie. Le seul job qu'il a eu dans sa vie, c'était un job de député. Il n'a jamais eu un salaire ou un travail en dehors de son poste de député. Il ne sait pas comment le secteur privé fonctionne. M. Poilievre ne connaît rien à la gestion d'économie. Moi, je suis économiste comme M. Carney. Quand il a dit il y a quelques années qu'il allait démettre le gouverneur de la Banque centrale de ses fonctions, c'était la pire idée que tout économiste ait pu imaginer de prendre.
When you're talking about the transformation of our health system, you always need more time. So there's, if I had years, it wouldn't be enough time to do the work that we need to do. So you take every day as it comes. But for me, as I say, we've done 3 pharmacare agreements. We're having active conversations with other jurisdictions, and we have other work that we're doing in health as well. So I'm focused on doing that. It's what I wake up on, focus on, and then there'll be other events, and we'll take them as they come.
Qu'est-ce que vous avez pensé des résultats hier? Mme Freeland est arrivée avec 8 %. C'est quand même pas tant que ça. Qu'est-ce que ça vous dit du rôle qu'elle devrait jouer au sein du parti?
Bien, écoutez, comme je le mentionnais, on a des candidats qui sont quand même de qualité. Puis moi, là, vous savez, j'avais appuyé Mme Freeland pendant la course à l'investiture, puis c'était important pour moi d'appuyer les femmes, surtout en termes de compétences. Mais on va continuer de travailler fort, tout le monde ensemble. On va se rallier, puis on va faire notre travail.
Quelle place vous voudriez, vous, avoir au sein du cabinet de Carney?
Ça, là, je laisse la décision au futur premier ministre. Là, comme j'ai toujours dit, on est toujours assis sur un siège éjectable.
Et quelle place devrait avoir Mme Gould et Mme Freeland que vous avez appuyées au sein de ce cabinet?
Ça va être la décision, puis c'est la prérogative du premier ministre.
Il a choisi Marco Mendicino comme chef de cabinet. Qu'est-ce que vous en pensez de ce choix?
Bien, écoutez, c'était mon ancien collègue. On était assis, c'était mon voisin. Puis je trouve que c'est un bon choix. Marco, c'est quelqu'un qui a travaillé fort aussi. Puis c'est quelqu'un qui est parfaitement bilingue.
En même temps, il a perdu son portefeuille. Il avait fait plusieurs gaffes. Est-ce que M. Mendicino est vraiment assez fort pour occuper cette position-là tellement importante de chef de cabinet?
Bien, écoutez, comme je vous l'ai dit, dit, hein, tous les ministres, nous sommes assis sur des chaises qui sont éjectables. L'important, c'est de faire du mieux qu'on peut dans la période de temps où on est présent. Puis, on continue de travailler.
Comment prévoyez-vous votre lutte contre M. Deschênes? Ça va être une course à surveiller. Est-ce que vous le connaissez?
Bien, je l'ai rencontré parce qu'ils sont allés passer 3 jours aux îles de la Madeleine. Puis, je lui ai souhaité bonne chance, mon petit garçon.
Merci.
Are you ready for an election? What do you think the party's chances are now?
I am ready for an election in Beaches East York, and I think we got a fair fighting chance now, yeah.
Mr. Poilievre's already attacking Mr. Carney. How do you think that's going to keep up, or what do you think what's going to happen in the election in terms of that?
I did notice for a brief moment on Flag Day he flirted with putting the national interest first, and now he's back to attacking his opponents and putting politics first. Look, we're in a moment where I think we should be sitting down together as much as possible and saying, how do we work together to push back against the economic threat south of the border, and that's what we should be focused on.
And last night, Mr. Carney had some strong words for Mr. Poilievre, but also Mr. Trump. What do you think that means for the U.S.-Canada relationship at this point, and as well, like, what did you think of, I guess, how strongly he came out against both of them?
I think it was clear that he was going to continue with a really strong, forceful response. We've seen an incredibly forceful, strong response from the government so far in terms of retaliatory measures. And I wouldn't just say in a partisan way, pointing to the federal Liberal government. Of course, I think Trudeau has met the moment, but I would say premiers, too, have stood strong and enacted their own measures, and I think it's incredibly important that we stand united on that front.
So you now have a new leader, Mark Carney, who's more further to the right than Justin Trudeau was. Do you think, like, for you, who's more...
In what way?
Well, he's against the carbon tax for the consumers, the tax for the... sorry, I don't have the word in English.
I wouldn't say it's on a left-right spectrum, though, right, when it comes to carbon pricing. I mean, carbon pricing is embraced by economists on the capital gains side. Yeah, that's fair on the capital gains side, but it's a bit mixed, is all I'm saying. But yeah, look, I have written to say that it's really unfortunate that the carbon tax, the carbon price was effectively killed by misinformation and attacks. We're going to wake up at one point and the lowest income Canadians are going to realize that their rebates are gone and that they're ultimately worse off as a result of this change. But I think the new leader has recognized, and I think all leaders in the race recognized, to one degree or another, that this was difficult politics and Canadians had spoken on it. And I think that's an unfortunate part of the debate on carbon pricing. As it relates to the evidence, we know it works. We know it's the most efficient way of reducing emissions. Politics doesn't always align with the evidence.
There was about 152,000 people who were able to actually vote in the leadership race. There were about 400,000 registered members. That 160 or so were able to get verified. Are you concerned about that at all? That the turnout was so low?
No, I haven't really dug too deeply into the numbers and what all. I heard overwhelmingly from people there were challenges and frustrations with voting. Obviously, you balance accessibility with security, but no, I thought it was a very large number of folks that ultimately were able to vote in the end, and obviously overwhelming results for Mr. Carney.
Just to be clear on my question earlier, are you preoccupied that Mr. Carney would pull the party more to the right?
It has not been a preoccupation of mine so far. I supported Mr. Carney, and I support him for a number of reasons. One, I think it's a moment that we need seriousness and we need thoughtfulness in our politics. And look, in this moment in time, it's really important we have someone who's standing up for Canada with experience and a record that they can point to. So I think there are all sorts of reasons. When you think of the contrast between Pierre Poilievre and Mark Carney in this moment, I think it's very obvious that one is someone of substance and the other is just always on the attack. So I think for all sorts of reasons, I support Carney. In terms of the direction of the party, look, we're a Big Ten party, and my experience in this party has been that my job as a member of Parliament for Beaches East York is to push and pull and push the party to be the best version of itself, and I'll continue to do that.
What do you think about Marco Mendicino as potential chief of staff to Mr. Carney?
Yeah, I was just reading that on the way over.
Temporary.
Yeah, well, so I was going to ask Marco about what the plan is there. I don't know enough about it yet. But yeah.
What do you think in that role, a temporary position during the transition team?
I mean, he's been a colleague of mine since 2015, so I'm interested to know sort of his thoughts on, are we talking 10 days, 60 days? Well, I genuinely want to know what his plan is and what the caucus relation plan is going to be. So yeah, I got more questions than answers on that one.
There were a number of patronage appointments that were put out, or a number of appointments that were made on Friday. a lot of them seem to be tied to the Liberal Party. What do you think of that?
I cannot comment on appointments sort of writ large. I think what we're doing is we're trying to complete appointments in a timely basis. The appointments that I take care of are members of the bench. My job is to make sure that our benches are at as full complement as possible. And I'm very pleased with the fact that we now have 13 vacancies around the country. It's 99% complete. It's never been this low in Canadian history, and no one's ever appointed judges as fast as I have. I think that's my job in terms of improving access to justice, taking top legal minds and putting them on the bench, ensuring those top legal minds also reflect the diversity of the country.
We're very excited about spending time with my colleagues. I'm very excited about hearing from our new leader, Mark, and I'm excited about us winning the next election. Je me sens très bien. On est dans une beaucoup meilleure position qu'on était en décembre. On a un nouveau chef qui a une pleine d'appui des libéraux partout au pays, une vieille amie. Et je suis je serai très contente d'entendre ce qu'il a dit et de parler avec mes collègues de caucus. Maintenant, on est tous ciblés sur les prochaines élections et on va gagner. Merci.
Est-ce que vous avez réfléchi à quel genre de poste de ministre vous aimeriez pour un cabinet Carney? Est-ce que vous en savez plus?
Non, mais ce que je veux dire, c'est que c'est au premier ministre de décider qu'est-ce qu'il veut dans son cabinet. Je suis là pour servir les Canadiens, lui appuyer comme je peux, mais ça c'est...
La parité homme-femme, ça demeure une priorité, j'imagine, pour la composition du conseil?
C'est son décision, c'est sa décision.
Est-ce que...
Again, that is up to the new Prime Minister to make a decision, and what I heard from him is, what I've been saying as well, that we have to make the decision that's right for Canadians. So I have confidence that he'll make that decision, and whenever that happens, it will definitely be before October.
Vous avez dit pendant la campagne que vous étiez la candidate du futur. Est-ce que vous allez vous relancer éventuellement à la chefferie?
Moi, je suis concentrée sur aujourd'hui et les journées à venir. Et sur l'avenir aussi.
Are you disappointed by your results yesterday?
Oh, sure. I mean, obviously, I would have liked to have seen, a greater percentage. Of course, I would have liked to win. But at the end of the day, what we saw was that it was a good day for the Liberal Party of Canada. It was a unified position, and I'm excited about that. There was so much energy in the room. You can hear it from my voice. I was talking a lot over the last day. And what I heard from Liberals is that they're excited about the future. They've, made clear what their decision is. And, my commitment is to the Liberal Party of Canada, but it's also to Canadians. And so I'm here to serve Canada and serve Canadians for
Votre relation avec M. Carney, vous le connaissez personnellement?
Je viens de lui connaître pendant la campagne de leadership. Et ce que je vois de lui, c'est qu'il est un homme qui est extrêmement qualifié, qui est dévoué au Canada, et j'ai hâte de travailler sur son équipe pour le Canada.
You have nearly half the riding still to fill with nominees for the Liberal Party. How ready do you feel for an election?
Well, I think we are very ready for an election. I think the party, what you saw yesterday, was able to pull together, a leadership campaign in 2 months very effectively. And so I have full confidence in the Liberal Party of Canada staff and volunteers that we're going to be able to stand up quickly. And I know that now that we have a new leader, people are going to be excited to run for us. So I don't have any worries about us finding excellent candidates for the upcoming election. Oh, that is up to the new Prime Minister, and I know he's going to make the right decision for Canada.
Pourquoi est-ce que c'est important qu'il y ait un mandat de la population rapidement, puisqu'il va être Premier ministre sans être élu, à part avoir été soutenu par quelques libéraux?
Ce qui est le plus important, c'est que nous sommes concentrés sur les Canadiens et le Canada. On doit assurer qu'on peut répondre au Donald Trump, et j'ai pleine confiance que le nouveau Premier ministre va prendre la meilleure décision pour les Canadiens.
Any indication if he'll be back in cabinet? I know you were asked in French.
Yeah. So look, that is up to the new Prime Minister to decide. He'll choose his team, and we serve at his pleasure. And so if I'm offered a position, obviously I will be happy to accept it, but that is his decision. I'm here for Canada and for Canadians.
Monsieur Mendicino, comme chef de cabinet, vous pensez quoi de cette décision-là?
Moi, j'adore Marco. Il est quelqu'un qui est extrêmement beaucoup d'expérience dans la politique. Alors, je crois que ça va être quelque chose de bien pour nous.
Mais ça s'était pas très bien terminé pour lui comme ministre. Alors, est-ce que la perception, ça peut peut-être être que c'est...
On apprend beaucoup dans la politique. Moi, j'ai appris beaucoup ces derniers 10 ans. Alors, je crois qu'il va prendre toute cette expérience et va travailler avec toute l'équipe pour nous guider pendant les
les prochains jours, les prochains
Can you answer that in English? Can you answer that in English?
Yeah, look, I mean, I love Marco. I've worked closely with him for 10 years, and so I'm sure that he's going to bring that experience with him to this position. And we're going to work as a team together, right, to figure out what we need to do over the coming days and coming months. And I'm going to head into cabinet right now, or into caucus right now, to make sure that I can be part of those conversations.
Est-ce que vous croyez que M. Carney a ce qu'il faut pour attirer les jeunes? Parce que c'était votre appel, vous, pendant la campagne. Est-ce que vous croyez que M. Carney, avec la stature qu'il a ce qu'il faut pour appeler les jeunes à voter?
Nous sommes toute une équipe. Alors moi, je suis là pour connecter avec les jeunes, avec les pas si jeunes aussi, parce que même si je suis une jeune politicienne, je ne suis pas trop jeune non plus, mais c'est toute une équipe libérale que nous sommes et c'est important d'assurer que nous connectons avec chaque génération de Canadiens.
Vous craignez qu'il tire le parti vers la droite, trop à droite?
Non, voilà, comme j'ai dit, le Parti libéral, c'est le grand tente rouge et je crois que c'est important d'avoir des personnes qui sont plus au gauche, plus au droite pour avoir ces grands débats, ces grandes conversations. C'est clair que je suis une des personnes qui est un peu plus à gauche, mais quand même, je vais continuer de pousser les idées des politiques, des programmes qui sont bien pour les Canadiens et les Canadiennes. C'est ce que j'ai fait pendant la campagne de chefferie. C'est ce que je vais continuer de faire.
What did you think about the voter turnout in the Liberal leadership race? Was that 152,000-ish people?
Yeah, well, look, that's almost 50,000 more than in the 2013 election. So I think that's great. I was thrilled to see the number of people who took out memberships, the number of people who participated, and the number of people who voted.
How many did your campaign register? Do you know?
I actually don't know the answer to that because it happened really quickly, so it's hard to tell.
Okay. It's much less than the number of people who took out memberships, though.
This one will bring, or what do you hope this one will bring?
I think Mr. Carney is what Canada needs as a whole. Not necessarily Liberal, Conservative, Independent. I think Mark Carney is what Canada needs to not only deal with the U.S., but to start to put us in a positive position.
Why do you think he's a better choice than Pierre Poilievre?
Oh, he's 100 miles ahead of Poilievre. He has the economic knowledge that I think Canada needs to really come out onto its own, to build our country up into a more positive, independent country that we are. And he has the expertise. Mr. Poilievre has nowhere near any of that kind of knowledge. He can pretend to, but he's like a little kid compared to a serious person who has the knowledge to build a country.
Only about 152,000 people actually voted out of about 400,000 who had registered. Do you see that as a problem?
No, we had a really good sound system to make sure that we kept foreign interference as much as possible out and people trying to monkey around with our election system. So it was really challenging to get through the system. And I think, but it was secure, and that was what was most important.
That it was almost too challenging for average people who are not, foreign interferers.
It's important that we make sure that everything is accurate, and there wasn't any playing around or mischief happening. I heard that there were 150,000 Conservatives signing up so they could vote for and I don't know if that was true or not, but we had to make sure our system was solid, and it proved that.
You wanted Dominic. You've got Mark. Dominic. Are you okay with Mark instead of Dominic? And he might still keep his job.
I think Dominic would have been a fabulous leader as well, but I think Mark is going to be, it's what Canada needs, not necessarily the Liberal Party. I think it's what Canada needs at this time.
Is the turnout seeing what you were seeing in your riding, like when you go to doors, for example?
People were excited about Mark Carney because of his economic credentials and where it moves us forward. This is an opportunity for us, both with Mark and with Trump, to move Canada forward in a much stronger position. So look forward to that.
Last night was a very strong mandate delivered by the Liberal members for Mark Carney. I think it's important to remember, Justin Trudeau had a very strong mandate in 2013. Mark Carney actually eclipsed that last night. You look at some of the results across the riding, even in my own, almost 1,000 people voted, 94% for Mark Carney, so it was very clear. I also think it's important to articulate that was, yes, Liberal Party members, but there are people that have joined across the country explicitly who have told me, I've never voted Liberal before, but I'll be voting Liberal this election because of Mark Carney's leadership. So, look, we're in a better place as a party. The work of government has to continue, and obviously we have considerations about getting a mandate from the Canadian people at some point soon. That'll be for our incoming Prime Minister to make those choices. But we're in a good place.
When would you like to see an election?
Look, I'm always ready. Scott Bryson told me the day I get elected in 2019, the next campaign starts the day after you're re-elected. So, frankly, we're always, our body of work as parliamentarians is always being judged by our constituents. So we're always out there doing the work. So whenever that time comes, we'll be ready.
How is
should Canadians be prepared for an early election call? Is that something that we should be watching?
What's the definition of an early election call?
Before October.
Before October? I mean, we're in a minority parliament, so an early election call could be the opposition bringing us down if we go back to parliament. It's obviously the prerogative of any prime minister to go to the Governor General if he or she believes that they need a mandate. So that will be up to Mr. Carney when he's sworn in to make those choices.
How is candidate recruitment going in Atlantic Canada?
Very well, yeah, and particularly over the last 8 weeks, we've had a lot of people who have expressed interest. There is a real movement around Mark Carney's leadership, and we have some really strong people who are wanting to step forward. We've got a great slate in Newfoundland and Labrador. Obviously, Lawrence MacAulay choosing to not move forward. It's hard to replace a Lawrence MacAulay, but we'll have a strong candidate in Cardigan. New Brunswick, Nova Scotia, same thing. So we're feeling good, but we have to stay focused first and foremost on Canadians, and then we'll have the conversation about what comes next on that.
452,000 were actually able to vote out of the 400,000 people who had been registered. Is that a problem for you?
What was the number you quoted again?
I think it was 152,000 votes on nearly total.
But you said something about people not being able to vote.
Well, there was 400,000 Liberals that had signed up, 163 that were verified, about 152, I think, who had voted. That turnout, are you concerned at all about that turnout?
That turnout, I believe, and I'm not a party insider in that sense, but I think is the largest number of Liberals to ever vote in a National Leadership Convention ever. I think it's a very significant number. Obviously, there's always people who may join a party, be interested in a particular leadership candidate, and might not actually go through with casting their ballot. But I think it was a strong testament. Remember, this was under a short period of time. We as the party had to remember that this leader was not only becoming a leader of a federal party, but ultimately going to be sworn in as a prime minister. I'm proud of the fact that the party had the ability to have a verified process. We know every single person who voted was legitimate, that there was no issues around foreign interference. I know there were some technical issues. We're going to be following up with some members today. It wasn't a perfect process, but I do think it was legitimate. I am very proud of the fact that the party put it on.
Mark Carney run? Where should Mark Carney
run? Up to Mark Carney. That'll be his decision, not for me to say as the good member of Parliament for King's Heads.
You're talking about a lot of seats in Atlantic Canada.
There's 32 seats in Atlantic Canada. If Mark Carney chooses to run anywhere in the country, we'll be proud, and we know that he'll have a good chance to be able to get a mandate. So that'll be for him to decide. That's a question for him. Obviously, if he chose to run an open seat in Atlantic Canada where we don't have a candidate yet, of course I would support that. I would love to see him run in Atlantic Canada, but that's his choice.
Il y a combien de postes de ministre en Atlantique? Est-ce que vous aimeriez en occuper un?
Moi? Oui. Non, c'est une question pour M. Carney. Mon focus maintenant, c'est sur, à propos de mes concitoyens à King's Heads, et bien sûr, dans mon rôle de caucus d'Atlantique.
Mais vous l'avez appuyé, vous voudriez pas un petit retour d'ascenseur?
Écoute, je toujours essayer de contribuer ici à Ottawa, mais encore, mon focus, c'est absolument un privilège de servir mes peuples de King's Heads. Et bien sûr, maintenant, avec la situation ici à la colline d'Ottawa, avec le nouveau mandat, le nouveau premier ministre, c'est mon focus de s'assurer que tous nos collègues sont ensemble. Nous sommes focusés pour les situations gouvernementales, situation avec les États-Unis, mais aussi avec le processus de préparer pour la prochaine élection.
Pour M. Carney, comme politicien, qu'est-ce qu'il doit travailler encore? Qu'est-ce qu'il doit peaufiner dans peut-être ses discours, sa manière d'interagir? Le Carney politicien, là, c'est pas à point encore. Qu'est-ce qu'il doit faire?
J'aime le politicien Carney. Je pense que le discours hier soir, le discours d'acceptance de le leadership était fait très bien. Son français amélioré avec le processus de notre chefferie. Et la seule question avant son leadership, son processus, a été l'habilité de faire une certaine retail politics. Et j'ai eu l'opportunité de bienvenir Mark dans ma circonscription en janvier ou 1er février. Il était complètement un rockstar. Et ma mère, en fait, a dit, oh, Mark, c'est très gentil. Très approche, he's very approachable. Donc, je suis confiant dans les habilités de Mark Carney dans le sens de ses habilités dans le contexte politique, mais aussi ses habilités dans une personne raisonnable.
Do you think Marco Mendicino would make a good chief of staff?
Sure. Look, Marco is a great colleague. I haven't heard that name floated. I'm not close to that process, but Marco is someone that has a lot of experience here in Parliament Hill. I think he's been a good colleague. I've had a good working relationship for him. If that's what happens, then good for Marco, and good for Mark Carney, good for us.
What about agriculture? Would you want to be agriculture minister?
My focus is right now on the people of King's Hands. I'm very pleased to have been advanced as the parliamentary secretary for Lawrence Macaulay, someone who I have a great respect for, and I'll take the opportunity to say that it's really commendable, his 36 years of service. He's done a good job. Marco Guilbeault's done a good job. I think sometimes the government doesn't get the appreciation that I think we could because we don't have as many rural seats. Sometimes I think our story is a little bit better to tell, but we have very few people to tell in those areas. I do have to keep moving, but thank you very much.
The Creed Allen campaign says that she sold 100,000 memberships, or registered 100,000 members. I just want to know what your reaction was to that in terms of if they didn't vote, was that part of the turnout issue?
It's hard for me to speculate on that. What I would say is that the party has a process to be able to handle challenges, appeals. Obviously, the party signaled that there was concerns around irregularities with her campaign, but I'm not really in a position to be able to say because I'm not privy to that internal process. But the process was followed. The appeal was made, appeal was judged on, so that's for the party to decide. Thank you. I got to keep moving.
Mr. Carney, what do you think of that?
Well, he's a long-time member of Parliament, knows caucus well, so it's an interesting choice, a surprising choice perhaps, because I thought, to be honest, Marco was going to run for Mayor of Toronto. It's not something that he had shared with me, but there were strong hints that he was moving in that direction, but he knows caucus well, and we know him well. So,
do you think he's strong enough to be chief of staff?
He has the experience of an MP. In fact, it would be interesting to see through history chiefs of staff to leaders who have served as members of Parliament. It adds a perspective that I think would do caucus very well.
What do you think your chances are in the next election now, of the party's chances?
Well, it feels great. You're starting to see a different mood out there. You have someone who has experience. You have someone who is a really thoughtful person, is not a politician, is a self-made man with years of experience guiding this country and the United Kingdom through crises.
And are you ready for an election? Do you have signs? Do you have volunteers? Do you have all that infrastructure in place?
All those things. I think we're always campaigning in one way or another, Ashley, but yes, we are hitting the ground running, I would assume very shortly.
Does Mendicino's appointment suggest the party's moving more to the right?
What's that, sorry?
I said if Mendicino is chief of staff, does that signal the Liberal Party's moving more to the right?
I wouldn't call Marco a right-wing MP by any... I call him a moderate of the, let's say, John Turner, Paul Martin variety. I put myself in that category, and I think Mark Carney is that kind of Liberal, and there's an evolution, I think, in that direction. I'm quite glad about that because that's where I think the country is right now.
Is it better for the Liberals to have an election sooner than later to keep some of this polling momentum going?
Look, I think the country is asking for an election. I do hear that. I think it's time for a government to earn a mandate to take on what is the foremost threat right now, and that's Donald Trump and the U.S. government, which was once an ally and now is perhaps not. Thank you.
She is somebody who I have a great degree of admiration for. I think she's made substantial contributions to our party, to our government, and to the country. And I'm proud of the campaign that she ran, and personally, I'm proud of her.
Should she be a part of the new cabinet?
That's a decision for the incoming Prime Minister to make.
Why did her vote collapse? She had a strategy to go to rural ridings and talk to Canadians in rural ridings, but that didn't bear out in the point system. What happened there? Why did Canadians rally around Carney instead?
I don't think that 24 hours after the votes have been tallied, less than 24 hours, we can have an answer to that question. There's postmortems that need to be done. I'm not sure that that's necessary in this case. It's a little bit different in a leadership than it is in a general election. I'm sure that there are some answers to be found, but I don't know what those would be, certainly so soon after the result.
How quickly would you like to see an election?
I think that the country is ready, given the moment that we face right now, particularly with the immense challenges south of the border, to have its say in terms of who they think should lead the country through this very difficult moment. So I think that should an election be called soon, that's an appropriate decision to make.
Do you have a personal relationship with Mr. Carney? Do you know him?
I've had the opportunity to chat with Mark on a number of occasions prior to his decision to enter the leadership race. I saw him not too long ago in Winnipeg when he was in town. He is a phenomenal leader. He is the right person for the moment, and that's what we need in particular right now, is somebody for the moment.
Est-ce que vous croyez que M. Carney devrait se présenter dans l'Ouest, dans une circonscription de l'Ouest?
Non, c'est pas nécessaire. Non.
Il n'y a pas de préférence. Vous ne croyez pas que ça pourrait
C'est à lui de décider. On a une équipe forte à l'Ouest. On va toujours ajouter des députés dans l'Ouest. C'est Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta. Si M. Carney décide de chercher son siège dans l'Ouest, excellent. C'est une bonne chose pour nous, mais c'est à lui de décider. Ce n'est pas nécessaire que c'est un siège dans l'Ouest.
What do you think of the attacks the Conservatives have been launching against Mr. Carney, calling him sneaky, calling him a liar? I mean, what do you think about that?
The moment calls for seriousness. The moment calls for us to have an experienced individual and an experienced government that has the ability to manage the very challenging circumstances that we face. Mr. Carney, in 2008, led the country through the financial crisis. In 2020, as the governor of the Bank of England, did the same thing, leading the country overseas through Brexit. He is an experienced individual with unparalleled intelligence, who has a demonstrated ability to lead in moments like this. Monsieur Poilievre, on the other hand, has spent his life being an angry bully, sloganeering in the House of Commons for the past 2 decades. It is simply not what the country needs right now. Mark represents the type of leader that can meet the moment. Pierre does not.
You supported Chrystia Freeland in this race.
I did.
Do you think that after her performance last night, 80% of the vote, that she will get a place, that she'll land a place in this cabinet?
Like I said to some of your colleagues a moment ago, the decisions around cabinet are for the Prime Minister to make. I'm not going to.
Do you want to see her there?
I think Chrystia. I think Chrystia has contributed and would continue to contribute a great deal to the government. I think she'd be a fantastic minister, but those decisions don't rest with me.
Thank you.
Happening right now. How quickly will it take to have him sworn in?
Oh, I don't know the answer to that. Yeah, you guys are asking me lots of good questions, but the leader gets to decide a lot of them.
The Ruby Dalla campaign says that she signed up 100,000 members. Do you think that that's a part of the issue around the turnout?
No.
Okay. Why not?
I'd have to verify those facts first, so I'm not going to take it at face value that she signed up 100,000 people.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do you think the carbon tax is going up on April 1?
Well, the new leader has been very public in making a commitment that we're moving away from the carbon tax. What mechanisms actually need to take place in terms of ensuring that that April 1st deadline and the new policy announcement is met, I'm not entirely sure.
Do you think Chrystia Freeland's going to be in cabinet?
As I've said to your colleagues, I think Chrystia has contributed a tremendous positive ways to our party, to the government, and to the country. I think if she were to serve as a minister moving forward, she would continue to do that in a fantastic way. But those decisions rest with the leader. Thank you.
Monsieur Arseneault, est-ce que M. Carney est le sauveur dont le Parti libéral avait besoin?
Je pense que le Canada a trouvé quelqu'un qui va pouvoir, peut-être pas le sauveur au sens avec un grand S majuscule, comme on l'entend religieusement, mais certainement quelqu'un qui sait tenir les commandes d'un navire en temps de crise. c'est sa carrière, monsieur qui affronte les crises, donc on sait qu'on a quelqu'un de solide au bar et aux commandes du gouvernement du Canada.
Le fait que je ne sois pas politicien, est-ce que c'est un désavantage selon vous?
Qui vient au monde politicien? Moi, le premier. Personne ne vient au monde politicien. Évidemment, il commence par la chaise haute tout de suite, je comprends.
2 mois là, qu'il en fait.
Mais exactement, il voit comment ça fonctionne, il y a plein d'expériences à vivre et à apprendre, mais qu'est-ce qu'on veut? Est-ce qu'on veut quelqu'un qui a fait que de la politique ou quelqu'un qui sait gérer des crises majeures comme celle qui nous attend au sud de notre 49e parallèle avec l'hurlu-berlu qu'on connaît? Donc, je pense qu'on a quelqu'un qui va donner confiance. En tout cas, déjà, on sent que les Canadiens, en tout cas chez moi, je vais parler pour chez moi, se sentent rassurés qu'on a l'homme qu'il faut, la personne qu'il faut pour tenir les commandes durant un temps de crise comme celle qu'on s'apprête à voir avec Trump.
M. Carney est devenu premier ministre, et va devenir premier ministre en ayant obtenu le vote de quelques milliers de libéraux. À quel point c'est important qu'il y ait un mandat de la population aussi, qu'on ait une élection qui donnerait ce mandat-là?
C'est capital. On ne peut pas diriger un pays sans avoir un mandat du pays. Aujourd'hui, on est dans une étape hier, c'est-à-dire, on finissait la convention, une étape où est-ce que l'équipe libérale, la famille libérale choisissait un successeur à M. Trudeau. Maintenant, dans votre phrase, la réponse est simple. Il s'apprend. Je l'espère. Moi, je l'espère. J'ai pas de boule de cristal. Il y a des stratégies. On a déjà notre équipe Canada. On a quand même des gens très respectables et crédibles qui s'occupent de nos affaires avec le président Trump, si on veut. Moi, je vous dirais rapide, mais peut-être qu'il y a d'autres stratégies qu'on entendra incessamment au caucus national.
Madame Freeland, est-ce qu'elle a sa place dans ce cabinet, vous pensez, avec 8 % des voix?
Je l'espère. Ça veut rien dire, 8 % des voix. Ça veut rien dire. Madame Freeland est une personne extrêmement crédible. C'est une des personnes, pour moi, c'est une étoile montante. Elle est crédible, elle est honnête, elle est droite, et elle a fait ce qu'il fallait faire. Maintenant, les gens, comme les libéraux, comme la famille libérale, je pense, nous ont donné un signal qu'on voulait justement quelqu'un qui n'avait pas fait de politique, pour revenir à une question précédente. Quelqu'un qui vient vraiment dehors de la boîte, mais qui a vécu des expériences de crise, qui a un bagage d'expérience extraordinaire. C'est ce que la famille libérale voulait, je pense, c'est ce que ça démontre. Ce n'est pas de dénigrer la valeur des autres candidats, au contraire.
Mais est-ce que Mme Freeland est trop attachée à l'héritage de Justin Trudeau, vous pensez?
Ben, attaché. Est-ce que moi, je suis attaché à trop littéraire? Écoutez,
elle a signé ses budgets, les déficits, ça, je veux dire.
Absolument. Elle faisait partie de l'équipe. C'était son rôle. Elle l'a fait, mais je pense qu'elle a une tête pour penser par elle-même aussi. Mme Freeland est quelqu'un d'extrêmement brillant. Non, je pense qu'elle va faire son boulot. On est réorienté vers autre chose. On a une autre crise à affronter, qui n'est pas la COVID, qui n'est pas autre chose, qui n'est pas l'Inde, qui est, bon, c'est avec notre meilleur allié, apparemment. Donc, je pense que Mme Freeland devrait être, je prévois qu'elle sera une des pièces maîtresses de ce qu'on aura au cabinet.
Juste, vous avez dit, moi je me trompe, vous ne représentez pas. Est-ce que M. Carney vous a fait changer d'avis? Est-ce que vous comptez vous représenter?
M. Carney ne m'a pas fait changer d'avis parce qu'il savait que déjà, on avait trouvé quelqu'un pour me remplacer en bien meilleur que moi. Donc, ça va être facile pour le Madawaska-Restigouche. Mais non, on a trouvé quelqu'un de notre association bien avant. Moi, j'ai annoncé très tôt au printemps que je ne me représentais plus pour nous donner tout le printemps et l'été à trouver des meilleurs candidats. Donc là, on a le meilleur candidat.
Qui va faire campagne un peu quand même.
Absolument. C'est déjà commencé.
Merci, M. Arseneault.
C'est moi qui vous remercie. C'est ma dernière fois, j'imagine, à Ottawa comme député.
C'est ça, là. Peut-être la semaine prochaine encore.
Oui, il y aurait un rouge de guitare au Nouveau-Brunswick. Salut, bye.
For an election, do you have volunteers in place, signs, all the stuff ready?
Of course. Always have everything ready. We have signs in storage, and they're always ready, and the volunteers in our riding have been working hard for the last number of years.
How are you feeling today after this landslide victory for Mark Carney in terms of the state of the party, your chances in the next election?
So much optimism. We've seen it across the country, in my riding, in the city of Calgary, and through the region, and across the country. There's so much new energy, a lot of old Liberals who had participated in this leadership race, and a lot of new Liberals who have joined the party. And so that revitalization and that new energy is great moving forward. And there's that sense of optimism, of strong leadership with our new Prime Minister, Mark Carney, leading us forward.
Do you think Mr. Carney should run in Alberta?
I'll let Mr. Carney decide where he will run. As you know, from being from the Northwest Territories, where he was born, and being raised in Edmonton, and where he launched the campaign. He's got a lot of support in our region, and I think he's going to be great for the nation.
So you don't have a preference for Edmonton or for Ottawa?
Sorry?
So you don't have necessarily a preference for Edmonton?
Well, I know where I'm running. I'm not going to speak on any other candidates. I'm running in Calgary-McKnight in the new riding. I think he'll make the best decision for the country.
Marco Mendicino is the temporary chief of staff. What do you think of
that? He was a great colleague. He's, I think, has a lot of knowledge on how government works and how our parliament works, and I think his experience will be valued in the upcoming days and weeks ahead.
This meeting compared to a caucus meeting 3 or 4 months ago.
Well, caucus is important for caucus members to learn, but participate into what caucus does. And I think from last night, there's a strong optimism within our party members and Liberal MPs who last night there was great excitement. And so I think today's caucus meeting also will have that optimism and excitement as we did last night.
I don't make the decisions about who's in cabinet.
No, I don't see that. I mean, we're all speaking in a united voice to fight for Canada. I think this is Canada first now, and I've been in touch with Premier Smith. I speak to Premier Ford. What we need now is unity, and purpose, and also to show our resolve and our strength to the administration. And I think with the new leader, it's a good way. I said that on US TV. It's a good time for them to put kind of a reset in Washington, how they engage with Canada. So, no, we're going to be united.
And how are you feeling going into maybe one of your last cabinet meetings with Prime Minister Trudeau?
Well, listen, it's kind of an era which is coming to an end, and a new chapter for Canada. And at a momentous time for the country. I think that this is in our generation probably the moment in time where Canadians are united, where we're feeling, our closest friend and partners turning its back on us. So there's this ahead of us, but looking back, we've done a lot of things for Canadians, and I think he showed us empathy, kindness, and leadership to some of the biggest crises that, in 10 years, sometimes you go in 10 years in politics, nothing happened, and then in 10 years it seems that a lot has happened. So we have to give him credit to steer the country during that time.
I think he's a very capable, talented fellow, and I look forward to working with him.
Were you surprised by that decision?
Yes, I was, actually. I had no idea that he was considering Marco, but I've known Marco a long time. I have great respect for Marco, and I look forward to working with him. So.
Mr. Carr get rid of the consumer carbon tax before the election?
Well, I think he was pretty clear that he's going to get rid of the consumer carbon price. But I think you're going to have to ask him about exactly when and the instrument that he's going to use, but it's pretty clear that he's going to get rid of it. So, thanks.
Improvements that we've made and we continue to make, and many of those improvements are on both sides of the border.
And what more are you communicating to them? I mean, that had been a long-standing point that you've been making to us, is that you're communicating back and forth. Do you have a better sense that it's actually making its way up to President Trump now?
We're creating new strike force teams, 10 of them across North America. We are cooperating in intelligence when it comes to, for example, the listing of cartels. We are making progress on the border with the Customs and Border Patrol folks. There are a number of places along the border where we're cooperating more fulsomely. We're sharing aerial data. We're making progress on that front. So we just keep moving forward on this, and we're hopeful that this is going to continue to make a difference. Keep our border strong and keep our Canadian community safe.
As far as you know, is it still the April 2nd deadline, or has there been any movement on that?
That's a question better put to my colleague.
Thank you so much. Meetings set up right now with the U.S. Administrator?
Sorry?
Do you have any meetings set up right now with the U.S. Administration?
I'm in constant touch with the American administration.
Thank you so much.
Steel and aluminum this week. Well, let me just start by saying that, and I think we need to keep saying it, which are these tariffs are unjustified. And you've seen what our government has already done around the retaliatory measures, the response to the existing tariffs. We are working very closely with the steel and aluminum sector, and we will have, we'll be ready with an appropriate response when they come, should they come. You have seen that the decisions for the tariffs have come, but then they have equally been uncertain about about timing and specific
specificity. So we'll wait on that, and we'll be ready.
What about dairy and lumber? The White House said they could impose tariffs today. Have you received any official indication that that's happening at all?
Not yet.
Okay. Can you just give just briefly what your understanding is of the current situation, as far as what's on the table, what isn't? Sorry.
Well, what we know to date is what the president has said, and what we have been informed, which is that we have that there are no tariffs on CUSMA compliant trade until April the 2nd. That is what we know at present.
And do you have clarity on what percentage of trade with the U.S. that is? I think there's been different numbers floated around.
Well, our analysis right now is that CUSMA compliant is really about meeting the substantially made in Canada, so the rules of origin, as well as products and goods that are that meet the compliance rules in labor and environment. In CUSMA, it's roughly about 40%, and the reason for that is because a lot of trade in Canada, in fact, virtually all of our trade is free trade, and therefore what is covered here is the WTO's MFN status. What I would say is that that virtually all trade in Canada is CUSMA is CUSMA eligible.
Thank you.
Great, thanks.
Can you just clarify that? Does that mean that essentially nothing's being tariffed right now? Sorry, I have a question from Washington. Basically, with the new order that he signed, giving it a 1-month pause, how much of Canada's trade is being impacted?
Will not have tariff are those that are the goods that are what is called CUSMA compliant. So compliant to CUSMA is substantially made in Canada. So therefore the rules of origin, as well as the way in which it's made, that actually is in compliance with the framework of CUSMA, which includes standards for our workers, which are really important to Canada. And in that agreement, when we renegotiated it, that's one of the things that we are very proud of, both in Canada and America, the high standards for workers in there. The rest of it is the rest of our trade follows the WTO most favored nation status, which means virtually no tariffs at all. So it does make it CUSMA eligible, but right now the CUSMA compliant is what we understand to be those that have the reprieve until April the 2nd.
Do you know what percentage of that is?
Roughly about 40.
Will the second phase of retaliation come into effect this week if there are steel and aluminum tariffs and dairy and lumber tariffs?
I think we're going to need to, we are working on this, and I think we're going to wait until we get the information and then respond appropriately. Thanks.
Two seconds too late. Et le fait qu'il connaît bien le caucus, évidemment, qui connaît les membres de la députation, et qui a déjà siégé au cabinet. Donc, je pense que pour Mark, pour M. Carney, c'était quelque chose d'important.
Mais est-ce qu'il peut demeurer député en même temps? Je veux dire, député, c'est un job à temps plein aussi?
Bien, je ne sais pas. Il faut poser la question à M. Mendicino en termes de ce qu'il va faire si cette fonction-là de chef de cabinet prend toute son importance. Je lui ai parlé 2 minutes tout à l'heure, alors je ne peux pas vraiment répondre à sa place.
Est-ce qu'on sait s'il se représente à l'élection ou...
Honnêtement, je ne suis pas certain. Donc, il faudrait vraiment lui poser la question.
Merci beaucoup.
We have been talking with the Americans for quite some time about the Columbia River Treaty between Environment Canada, Global Affairs, and there's another department that's been involved in those conversations. It's a long treaty that we've had with the United States, and we were already having discussions with them. The treaty needs to be, we need to modernize it at given moments, so those conversations are already happening.
Is it a serious concern, though, about how Trump is looking at taking it over?
Well, there are advantages to both parties to this treaty. If President Trump would want to put an end to it, there would be repercussions in the United States. I think this needs to be explained to the White House administration. There are benefits to the Americans. There are benefits to Canadians. It's been a mutually beneficial agreement for a very long time.
Like what? Like you say, repercussions. Like what?
For example, on water management. To ensure that on both sides of the borders we can manage the way insofar that we can minimize the risk of flooding, for example, which can happen on the Canadian side, which has happened before, but it can also happen on the American side as well.
Sur la tarification du carbone, l'annulation de la partie pour les consommateurs,
Oui.
qui serait faite chez les consommateurs, est-ce que cette annulation-là peut être faite avant l'échéance de l'élection ou ça pourrait prendre plus de temps?
Mon équipe et moi travaillons là-dessus. On est en train de regarder différentes options. Est-ce qu'il faut que ce soit un changement législatif? Est-ce que ça peut être le gouvernement conseil? À la limite, une direction du premier ministre. Donc, il y a différentes options qui sont étudiées présentement. Je vais avoir besoin d'encore quelques temps pour arriver à une réponse définitive.
Est-ce que la volonté, c'est de le faire avant qu'on soit en campagne électorale?
Je pense que M. Carney a été assez clair là-dessus. Là, il voulait que ça se fasse rapidement. Alors, je travaille pour faire en sorte que lui donner toutes les options possibles. Ce sera sa décision en bout de ligne.
And what do you know about the transition going forward? I mean, this could be your last cabinet meeting with Prime Minister Trudeau?
I don't have more information than you do. Merci.
Thank you. Speech to caucus.
It was great. Yeah, it was a good welcome. It was an introduction. He did very well. He was very well received. Obviously, there's a lot of excitement. This is his first caucus meeting, and I think we're very, very excited at the prospects of really fighting Trump and making sure that Canada is represented at the international stage.
What did he tell caucus members? Just give us a general sense.
I can't really go into what he says, obviously, but it was an introductory meeting. He was, good-humored. He was witty. He spoke to everyone. He listened to the regional caucus reports. And he heard from caucus members. He was only there for a brief period of time, just given a lot happening today. But it was a really good introduction to caucus.
How long did he address caucus for?
Well, you saw him in and out, right? About half an hour. He's there for about half an hour.
Marco Mendicino as his chief of staff in the transition. Is that a good choice? The Conservatives are already attacking him for this.
Well, look, I will leave that to the decision that Mr. Carney made. Like Marco Mendicino has served Canada in so many different capacities. He's a strong caucus member, and I believe he has a lot to offer. I think what's key is that this role is transitional, and he has good relations both on the current administration as well as the incoming administration. So I believe it'll be a good bridge between the two. What's important is that we have a seamless transition over the next several weeks to ensure that the Canadians are well served. Well, I think those decisions will be made by Mr. Carney. I have been absolutely fortunate to serve this country, and I will continue to serve in any capacity I can.
Just about Mr. Mendicino, what do you mean by it's transitional? That it's have to resign as MP?
As Crown-Indigenous Relations Minister?
I had a great time, and I really enjoyed working and advancing reconciliation. As you know, we completed a number of very important things over the last 1.5 years, and it's been an absolute honor and a privilege to serve. And it's one of those moments in history, for example, Haida Gwaii, recognizing Aboriginal title in Haida Gwaii was super important. Things like revenue sharing with the Musqueam, a number of modern treaties. So I think we've done some very important transformational work, but also intergenerational work to ensure that reconciliation is on the right track.
But would you accept this job again if you were asked to
This has been an absolute honor to serve in this role, and I'm very fortunate to have served as the Minister of Crown-Indigenous Relations and Northern Affairs. Thank you.
It wasn't public. I lost my mom recently. It's okay. And you just start to think about time and how you're spending it. And I love my communities so very much. But I just thought about what I need to do. I also thought, hey, I'm not 35, I'm 55. So what do the next 10 years look like? And I also know that wherever I am, I'm going to serve in some way. Whether it's holding a mic like you are right now, I always felt like I was giving people voice with my microphone, and I feel that I'll be doing the same thing wherever I am. I don't have a plan. It is the first time, honestly, in my life where I don't know what I'm doing next. I'm out there without a parachute. But we'll see what happens. But thank you so much.
And any sense of maybe who might be the next candidate in
Right
Toronto
now, I don't
Senate?
know, but I can tell you there are some great people in Toronto Centre that are rooted there, that know the community, that love the community. So there will be no shortage of people putting their hands up and saying, I want to do this.
What about the new leader, Mark Carney, who's looking for a seat?
You know what? Always a possibility. I don't know. I should clear the air because many, when I made my statement on Friday, said, oh, what's going on here? Did you get pushed out? That's not the case. That decision was mine. I don't know who that will go to, but I just would say they need to, and I'll be watching, serve the community well. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Mr. Carney's speech to caucus.
That was very good.
And why is that?
Well, he laid out a vision that will unite caucus around the challenge of the moment, and that's taking on what Donald Trump is proposing. Every chance he gets, he talks about Canada's critical minerals, he talks about natural resources, now our water. We need to present an agenda that will defend the country, and I think that on top of his economic expertise, he's presenting something that will get us behind exactly that kind of message.
How soon do you want to see an election called?
We will see. Certainly, I think there is an interest in an election right now in the country because of what's transpiring in our relations with the United States. I think it's a good argument that people have when it's been proposed about a government earning a mandate to engage with the United States, and so we'll see what happens exactly with that. But this is a decision that others will make.
How quickly will he be rid of the carbon tax? How quickly will he be rid of the carbon tax?
We'll see. We'll see. I think decisions on that will be made soon, but clearly it's been, policy-wise, the idea did lead to outcomes that I think were beneficial generally for the country from a climate change perspective. However, it's proven very divisive, and there's other ways that we can put in place real, genuine, progressive climate change policy. And look, this is someone who's an expert not just in the economy, but on climate change and climate finance in particular. So I'm sure, I'm very confident that he has ideas on alternatives to pricing carbon.
Were you surprised to see Marco Mendicino come in as Chief of Staff today?
Only because he had hinted that he was very seriously thinking about running for mayor, perhaps, but this is a great honor to be a Chief of Staff to someone who's about to be sworn in as Prime Minister. And I think it's a decision that will serve caucus well. He has expertise, obviously, as being a member of Parliament. He knows exactly the demands of the job, and it would be, as I shared with one of your colleagues earlier today, I think it would be very interesting to see in the history of Chiefs of Staff how many have served as members of Parliament. I don't think the list is very long. So having one of us go into that role, if I can put it that way, I think is an interesting decision, but a positive one too.
Okay. Did Mr. Mendicino hint at wanting to become mayor of Toronto? Is it because of his social media posts?
So just social media posts. Okay, let me just clarify that he had not told me anything about that. So, but it was just posts that he had put online, plus musings that colleagues in the media were your colleagues in the media were talking about.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for clarifying.
What do you think of Marco Mendicino being named Chief of Staff?
I've enjoyed working with Marco over the years, and I think he knows this place really, really well. So I'm looking forward to continuing to work with him.
Were you surprised at all by that choice? Others have said it was a surprise.
I won't say that I was. Yeah, I guess I was surprised. I didn't know. I talked to him yesterday and tried to convince him to run again for us because I think he's been a solid colleague and a good friend, and I know that. I know.
Tell you I'm Chief of Staff instead, so I'm not running. How did that conversation go?
No, I think it was clear that it was to be kept relatively quiet until the announcement. But I mean, look, he's an awesome friend, so I'm thrilled for him.
Would you like to see Mr. Carney get rid of the consumer carbon tax before the federal election is called?
Yes, I think so. It's just become a huge distraction, and unfortunately, sucks up all the oxygen in the room in the conversation. There's other ways that we can reduce emissions and fight climate change that aren't so divisive and toxic.
And how can you do that without Parliament coming back?
I'll leave that up to the Minister of Finance and the Minister of the Environment. I think it's very possible. It won't go up on April 1st in short order. The consumer carbon tax will be removed from other fuels as well. My concern, as somebody that is concerned about vulnerable people, is that students and seniors and young people and families depend on the rebate. So we want to make sure that we are there for families.
And would that rebate still come into effect? I guess not, if it's the consumer.
If they're not collecting the carbon tax, it's a rebate.
Yeah.
So if they're not collecting the price on pollution, then no, they wouldn't be getting the rebate. But I know that those transfers that the government makes, whether it's the HST refund or the rebate, Canada Child Benefit, Guaranteed Income Supplement, Canada Workers Benefit, these benefits really make a positive impact in people's lives. People depend on them. I recently published a calendar in January as a Member of Parliament for Milton, and I included all the OAS dates and the GIS dates in that paper calendar, and I had 4 seniors come up to me one day and say, hey, I got your calendar, and I'm really grateful to know what date that direct deposit is going to happen, because I plan my shopping around it. And so if those, the Canada Carbon Rebate is just the same thing. So we're past it, and that's fine. But we're also going to look for other ways to support Canadians and to make sure that that we're fighting climate change and reducing our emissions all at the same time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
What did I think of his speech? That was great. Yeah, everything's great.
And what was great about it?
Well, I think for the Liberal Party, he's grabbed the radical center, and that's more of a comfortable position for the Liberals to be in.
How long did he address caucus for?
5 minutes, I guess. Yeah.
What do you think of his choice of Marco Mendicino as Chief of Staff?
Well, it's a bit of a surprise, but Marco knows caucus, Marco knows cabinet, and for the time being, good.
Are you worried about Conservatives attacking Carney for this? Because they're already on social media attacking him hard for this choice.
Look, Poilievre has immense talent to destroy people's reputations, and he's on full bore right now. He could destroy the reputation of the Lord himself. So.
When would you like the election to be called?
Sooner rather than later.
Okay. Thank
Can you describe the energy in the room when he was addressing caucus?
I would say it's over the moon.
Over the moon, really? Yeah. Sounds good. Thank you.
Carney's speech to caucus. What did you think of Carney's speech to caucus?
Oh, it was great. Always, when he's a very straight shooter and a doer. So that's what he's going to do, and he proved it. 86% popularity. That's quite a big number, and I see it on the grassroots as well. He's resonating. In my riding, I get called every day. They want to support Carney. How can they vote? That was a good thing, is because they liked how he speaks and brings issues forward and acts on it, and particularly those 2 issues on the consumer carbon tax and capital gains tax. That's big in my riding, capital gains tax. So he's going to get rid of that. So it matters.
What do you make of Marco Mendicino being named Chief of Staff?
It's great. Marco is he's been an MP. He's been a minister, so he knows, and he's been a very lovable person. He will be able to interact with the colleagues. He's been a colleague to us. That's what I see. It's going to be a very positive thing that he will be a conduit between the leader and the caucus at the same time.
How ready do you think Carney is to take on Pierre Poilievre?
Oh, he is ready. Poilievre is hiding for the last month. You have seen it because he's not coming out. Anytime he comes out, is basically he acts as a mini Trump. So Carney is ready for Canada and Canadians, and he's ready to take Poilievre any day, any time.
But Poilievre is continuously chipping away at Carney's credibility. So how do you think he should deal with that? He even held a press conference today attacking him.
No, even not today. Let me say this way. When he came, before Carney became the leader, instead of standing up for Canada and Canadians and attacking Trump, he was attacking Carney, which is not fair. A lot of my constituents have come to me, and they have taken it very negative. They're thinking that he's mini Trump, and that's what he's acting. And Carney is coming straight shooter, who's here to save Canada and save Canadian and save our identity and sovereignty.
And how soon do you want to see an election?
Liberals have given him the mandate. Now he should be ready to get the mandate from Canadians the soonest possible. That's what my...
Do you have a campaigning office?
I will always have campaign office because it's not hard to find campaign. When you are in the riding, my riding, I've been there. Whether it was Liberal Party was down or up. I ran under Martin, Dion, Ignatieff, Trudeau, and now under Carney. So our team is very well prepared, very experienced. I have the same campaign chair from my first election to today, and we are ready to go. if its election is called.
Thanks for stopping.
Thank you.
What did you think of Carney's speech to caucus? What did you think of it?
Oh, I thought it was fantastic. Yeah, he's always fantastic. I've known him for quite a number of years. What else would you like to know?
Well, do you think he has what it takes to take on Pierre Poilievre?
Absolutely. That's why I supported his leadership bid, 100%. I think he's the man for the moment for this country, and I think he's demonstrating that through his speeches. But I think his credentials really speak for themselves, and I think Canadians are responding to that. We've had more interest in the Liberal movement as a result of him joining the party and really putting his name forward to stand up for the country at a time where we need someone with his background and expertise.
What did you think of his choice of Marco Mendicino as Chief of Staff?
Well, I fully support it. I've known Marco for years, and I think it will provide a seamless transition, which is, I think, what we need right now. We need someone who understands the way politics works. We also need someone who I think is a hard worker, and I think Marco is that guy. So.
But the Conservatives are already attacking Mendicino, his credibility, his record in the House of Commons. Isn't that a distraction?
Well, they do that all the time with everything. So that's just their mode of operations at every moment is to attack everybody all the time. So I don't think Canadians want an attack dog type government right now. I think the opposition at this moment, sure, they got to be oppositional, but they are dividing and I think distracting from what Canadians really want. They want a government who's steady, has a hand on the rudder, is confident in themselves, that can stand up to Donald Trump and his tariff threats and get the country through what's going to be a challenging 4 years.
How soon do you want to see a federal election?
Well, I'm ready to go at any moment in my riding of Whitby. So I look forward to giving the choice to the people of Whitby as to who they want to represent them. And I think our Liberal Party is in a very strong position right now. It's great to see.
Thanks for stopping.